Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Callaghan-Croley, staff writer here at Nittany Nation. Today, I'm joined by Adam Schnepp of Maize Blue Review, our brand new Michigan sister site here on Rivals. Today, we're going to be briefly looking at the Michigan side of things heading into this weekend's Big Ten matchup between number 6 Michigan and Penn State at Beaver Stadium on Saturday. You can watch the game live on ABC at noon. I guess, Adam, just to start off here, let's talk about Michigan as a whole. The Wolverines last year did, like Penn State, had a rough season. Didn't really live up to expectations coming in the season, but COVID and everything else, a lot of teams wrote it off. What were the expectations coming into this season, particularly around the program, and I guess just overall as well? What's been your biggest takeaway so far?
I think my biggest takeaway so far is how well the defense is acclimated to the changes that were made in the offseason as far as the coaching staff is concerned and as far as the scheme is concerned, moving to more of something closer to a 3-4. As far as expectations go, I would say my general feel was that people were expecting maybe like an 8-5 season. Some improvement, of course, from last year, but to say they've exceeded expectations definitely seems fair to me at this point.
Let's quickly talk about that defense, because last year the defense, I mean, it was an abysmal defense. No matter how you look at it, the Wolverines allowed 34 and a half points per game, which ranked 95th in the country. They allowed 434 yards per game, including 255 passing yards per game. This year, it's night and day. They're allowing 16 points per game, which is seventh in the country, allowing less than 300 total yards per game, which includes less than 200 yards through the air. What's just been the major difference from last season to this year, do you think, beyond perhaps scheme that has led to this success?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is that we've heard from a number of the players over the course of the year in media availabilities that have mentioned a more collaborative process to how this
Mm-hmm.
defense is run. It seems like in the past, it was essentially set by the coaches, and whatever happened was whatever they said would happen. Whereas now there's more feedback incorporated as far as what guys are comfortable with. They're trying to put them in the best position for them, um, which is, I think, big for guys that have been more used to being put into a position that fits whatever the scheme is. And I think that has allowed guys to play freer. And on top of that, there's been a lot of natural development, I would say, the growth that you would expect to see guys make from year to year. And then some of that is guys that have hit sort of an accelerated growth curve, like edge rusher David Ojabo.
Yeah.
And you kind of could see that there was potential there, but then these are guys that have taken more than just a step forward. And so, whenever you have an edge rusher like that, it's going to make everything look a little bit better because you're going to give the opposing quarterback a little bit less time to function. So, it all works together kind of hand in hand that way.
Sure, and we'll come back to defense a little. In terms of specifics for this weekend's game, I think the biggest place to start is injuries. I mean, for having a rather comfortable win against Indiana last week, the Wolverines got banged up, especially on offense. Angelo Anthony left with an injury. AJ Henning left with an injury, and of course Blake Corum left with an injury as well. Uh, what's been the updates on those three heading into this game? I know Corum we saw in a walk-in boot during last week's game against
Mhm.
Indiana, but any updates on those three?
The program has been very tight lipped about that. Um, all the coaches we've talked to have been uh, unwilling or unable to comment on that, and players were the same way this week. Um, I really wish I could give you a better injury update, but it's very much intentionally been left in the dark. Um, and there are some guys, though, that I could say were maybe precautionary holdouts last week that might be back this week.
Sure.
These are guys like Eric All and freshman running back Donovan Edwards.
Yeah.
Um, they may miss this week's game, but those are the ones that are seeming more likely than the ones that got injured last week. Like you said, Corum was in the walking boot. On defense, Jamon Green went out. He had been a starting corner, and it felt like the way the players talked about it, particularly Daxton Hill at availability this week, that he would not be back. But that's just my interpretation of things.
Yeah.
No official word on that one way or the other. And the receiving core, really not sure. I think that could go either way, 50-50 as far as Anthony and Henning. So to be determined. We'll find out a lot on Saturday morning.
Sure. Now, and we're obviously very used to that here, covering Penn State. Franklin does not say anything regarding injuries unless it's a season-ending injury.
Yeah.
And the rest is just a guessing game for the majority of the season. But yeah, thanks for what you did provide on the injury update. I totally forgot about Green leaving Indiana with that injury. It really is amazing for how comfortable that win was on the box score, how beat up Michigan left in that game, which just for them, not the greatest time in here coming down the stretch with obviously Penn State this weekend, but just 2 weeks away.
Exactly.
You got Ohio State.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
If Blake Corum can't go, Hassan Haskins is going to obviously be the guy there in the backfield, and he's obviously having a great season. Actual numbers are in totals better than Corum. I think Corum has the edge in terms of yards per carry. But will this Michigan run game change at all in the way they attack with Haskins rather than Corum, or is it going to be mostly the same game plan, you would say?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are some changes, definitely, with Haskins by himself in the backfield. They were starting to get kind of the thunder and lightning moniker there. Essentially, I guess the best way to put it is that schematically, I don't know that much will really change, but what can happen at and past the line of scrimmage changes. Haskins is going to get to the line and then look like he's stopped and then get 4 yards. Whereas Corum's more likely to find the lane, juke a guy, and get to the second level. We did see a few changes last week with Haskins. They ran some outside zone that worked pretty nicely. Whether that was something that was just planned because of Indiana's defense, I don't know exactly. But with Haskins, expect a guy who falls forward and picks up more yards than you would expect him to be able to get. But there's still going to be, like I was saying, schematically, some little bit of zone, more gap running, more man. So they tend to give them similar plays. They just are able to do different things with the ball in their hands.
Sure. And one running back that you briefly mentioned who was held out against Indiana, Donovan Edwards, formerly really highly touted prospect. What has his progression been like so far on campus? And if we do see him this weekend, what's he bring to that Michigan offense?
Yeah, so he's kind of an interesting mix of a Haskins and a Corum. He is a strong back. He can make guys miss. He's maybe faster than Haskins. And the way that Michigan's tended to use him because of that speed is to put him in a situation where they can pass the ball to him. And so if he does play this weekend and you see some wheel routes, those are probably going to be run by Donovan Edwards as opposed to Hassan Haskins. Haskins' value is continuing to rise as a pass protector, so it makes more sense to leave him in the backfield and let him take care of whatever might leak through, and to instead split Edwards out and try to get him the ball in space.
Sure, and that if Henning and Anthony are out, could help with that, supplement the passing attack. And I guess to build off the passing attack there quickly, while Henning and Anthony are two notable names, neither have been really the go-to guy in that passing attack, and are actually quite down the list. So, who are going to be the names to watch here in the passing game for the Wolverines?
Hey, the interesting thing about the receiving core this year with Ronnie Bell getting injured in the first game is that it's been sort of a different guy who has stepped up each week and been able to
Sure.
fill the lead receiver role. For a little bit there, it was transferred Dalen Baldwin. Cornelius Johnson has been the recipient of most of the deep balls lately. So you may hear his name on Saturday. But I don't know if it's fair to say it's a receiver by committee, but who has the biggest game each week does tend to rotate, and that includes the tight ends who've been getting more involved in the passing game lately as well.
Yeah, it's while Penn State obviously has a ton of depth there at wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
The last few weeks has definitely been the Jahan Dotson show for the Nittany Lions, and then with the Wolverines, like you said, just it's anybody's guess who could be the guy this week or
Absolutely.
next week.
Yep.
Obviously, the passing game hasn't been a huge part of Michigan's offensive game plans this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just 217 yards per game. The Nittany Lions are surely going to try to make it a bigger part of their game. When Michigan's run game has struggled this year, what has been the keys for opposing defenses to it's impossible to stop this rushing attack. They've only been held under 150 yards 3 times. But what's the keys to slowing down this rushing attack?
That's a great question. Michigan's offensive line has actually been better, I think, in pass protection than run blocking, especially the last few weeks. And so if you have, which I know Penn State does, a good defensive line and a good set of linebackers, and those guys are gap sound, that has made things difficult, I think, for Michigan. And so it's making sure that each guy on the defense is in the right gap, and I like the Nittany Lions' chances of being able to do that from what I've seen.
Sure. All right. If Penn State can slow down this rushing attack enough to force more of the passing game for Michigan to come out in this game, which I think if Penn State's going to win, that's going to be a big key, is forcing Cade McNamara to win this game.
Yeah, agreed.
Do you think Cade McNamara has it in him to go up against what has been a very good Penn State secondary this season and make those big passes when needed if it comes down to the passing game?
Yeah. The thing about Cade McNamara is that he is a very safe quarterback. So if Michigan gets into a situation where they have to move down the field quickly and it's a long field for them, I think that doesn't play to their strengths. But I think when he's been able to work sort of the mid-range game, he's been very efficient, and the receivers are pretty well suited for that, the guys that are available. So I think with McNamara, you're going to see a guy who doesn't make mistakes. He has good pocket presence, and he's able to slide away from pressure, and he's able to stay focused downfield. And so I would say in a close game, like I was saying, I like them if they don't have to work essentially a 2-minute drill.
Sure. And I guess if we're talking about throwing the ball, Penn State has not been able to run the ball at all this year.
Mm-hmm.
It looks unlikely that they'll be able to get it going this week, with Michigan only allowing 124 yards per game on the ground. So Penn State, everybody knows, is going to pass the ball a ton in this game, and if they're going to win, it's going to be through the air. How do you think this Michigan secondary matches up with Penn State's receiving core, and especially Jahan Dotson?
Yeah, so Dotson is a problem, right? I mean, I think for any defense in the Big Ten, he's going to be a problem. Was looking at numbers earlier tonight and noticed he's targeted twice as much as any other receiver in Penn State's receiving core, and yet his numbers are excellent. According to Pro Football Focus, he's had 1 drop all year. So I don't think you're going to be able to stop him. You can only hope to contain him, really. I think as far as Michigan is concerned, there's a number of sort of interesting things they can do there. They can. Vincent Gray had a really bad 2020, but has had a very good 2021. That's one of the guys who's made maybe the biggest step forward. And so you feel actually okay with him as an outside corner there, knowing that he has help in Brad Hawkins and Daxton Hill at the safety position. It does hurt that Jamon Green is out, but another guy who stepped up for this defense is DJ Turner at corner. And so I'm not sure exactly whether Michigan will stick one corner on Dotson all game and then bracket him or something of that nature, or whether they'll mix things to try to give him different looks. But I think he's going to get his catches. I think he's going to pick up some yards, and I think that there's going to be a little bit of a bend but don't break mentality there.
Sure. And talking about the Michigan secondary there, how has kind of like Penn State in the secondary, Jaquan Brisker having a veteran presence. Brad Hawkins has had a similar, I think, veteran presence back there. Can you just speak a little bit to the progression he's made from last year into this year, but also being the leader of that secondary, one of the leaders overall of the defense?
Yeah, leader is definitely a word that comes to mind with him for a guy who's been in the program that long. He has definitely, I think, stepped up a bit in run defense. He's good in coverage. He had a couple of weeks where his run defense wasn't as good as it had been prior, and he looks like that's essentially righted itself at this point. But I think it's invaluable for those guys to have someone on the back end like that who can help get guys into the right position, make sure everything's lined up right before the snap.
Sure. And of course, any part of stopping a pass attack is going to start in the trenches at the defensive line in the front seven, trying to get to the quarterback. Michigan arguably has two of the best defensive ends in the entire Big Ten this year, and maybe the best defensive end duo in the entire country. What has it been like just watching Hutchinson and Ojabo play this season? Because they've obviously been spectacular.
Yeah, sorry. So Hutchinson and Ojabo have just they've exceeded everyone's expectations at this point. Particularly Ojabo. There's just so much that a defense can do when you have two guys that rush off the edge like that instead of just one. It's not easy to slide protect. It's no longer easy to chip them. And so really they're the key to the defense, and they are the reason that this defense has been what it's been this year.
Sure. And I guess with that, just how do you ultimately see this game playing out on Saturday between Penn State and Michigan?
So close. I really think it's going to be very close. I wouldn't be surprised if the point differential here is 3 points, maybe 4. But I think that both teams are going to, if I had to predict it, they're going to get down the field. I think things could get bogged down in the red zone a bit for either squad. Sure. And I think that field goals will be important, one of those kind of games. And I just think that, Michigan's defense against their defensive line against Penn State's offensive line is going to be key. And then Penn State's front seven against Michigan's run game is going to be key. I just think it's going to be a very close game that way. Yeah,
personally, I was, when I was making my prediction, I felt the game was going to be somewhere around 23-20. I didn't know which side it was going to be. And right now I still don't. But you actually made me think of one more question, and that was the red zone. Penn State's red zone defense this season has been phenomenal. How has Michigan's offense been in the red zone? Is that a place they've been able to succeed fairly regularly, or have they had their struggles?
Sorry, my son just jumped on the call here.
You're good.
So their red zone scoring percentage is excellent.
Hi.
Michigan's red zone scoring percentage is actually very good, but that's with a healthy mix of field goals, and that's been a topic of conversation for other media members and people around the football building this week. And if you asked the Michigan fan base, you'd get an answer that that they are not happy with the number of field goals Michigan has had to kick lately. Michigan's done a good job of getting into the red zone, or at least inside the 25. And I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but they have had to kick a fair amount lately. They have senior Jake Moody, who has been extremely reliable this year. And it's, of course, nice to have a guy like that on your team. But as the coaches keep saying, once you get down there, the goal is to score touchdowns, not kick field goals. So it's certainly something that Michigan's been working on in practice.
All right. Well, I think that's all I got. So thank you, Adam, for hopping on with us tonight. And thanks for all the information.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dylan.